Hi there viewers, welcome to Get Well, Stay Well on Revelation TV. My name is Cyrus Fernando and once again delighted to be joined by Felicity. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Si. It's great to be here today and we're going to be talking about digestive health.
Excellent.
Really good topic. I was on the phones last night. I had wonderful conversations with so many of the viewers on the donations line, and people are really interested in our program last week on autoimmune disease. So we must do some more on that because really people want to know, you know, it's asthma and chronic fatigue syndrome and eczema and all these usual things that people are suffering from. And they were all telling me that they're juicing. I mean, I'm just amazed how many people are doing this. They're juicing, they're getting well, and I'm getting lovely testimonies from people. Wow. So it's really encouraging.
I bet it's encouraging to hear, especially when you have the testimonies of how people are actually changing their lives and benefiting from your advice and maybe from our programs as well.
Well, I'm lucky because I'm benefiting from what God taught me really over years of doing the wrong things, and then, you know, God always gives us a second chance. It's amazing. And so it's a real joy to be able to spread the good news.
Now, Revelation TV constantly has new viewers to the channel. Just remind our viewers, or just let them know, what is our program about?
Well, it's about getting well and staying well, because when we actually restore health to the immune system, the body does heal itself. And when we just resort to a drug, an aspirin or something, we don't actually address the cause of the disease. So it's like taking antibiotics. They actually do quite a lot of harm in the body. There's an immediate effect of you know, killing a germ, but of course if you don't address the actual cause of the problem and you go on causing the problem, the thing's going to come back on you. So it works with everything. It's the same with arthritis, with cancer, with diabetes. You know, once we really detox, we restore the deficiency of the living enzymes God has told us to eat in Genesis 1:29 and 30. It's amazing how we heal.
And we're not only going to be talking about food, but also the lifestyle change that we're leading as well. I mean, we've got a very encouraging testimony today from a gentleman who had been through eating the bad foods and drinking the alcohol and smoking and living that kind of lifestyle. And he got to the age of 40 years old and just realized, hang on a second, this isn't going good. I need to make some changes in my life.
That's right. And it's exercise as well. It's getting in the fresh air. It's getting some exercise, because then we oxygenate the body naturally as well. So it's really putting everything together. You know, it's nutrition, exercise, water, because we're all dehydrated, and sunshine and relaxation. Getting decent sleep at night is really important. And trusting God, of course. So when we come back to the real ancient knowledge that's always been there, and we've come so far away from that in our 21st century lifestyle, with stress, with electromagnetic radiation, with the processed foods and the chemicals that didn't exist 50 years ago. So really, when we come back to some common sense, people do get well and they stay well.
Now, our first clip that we're going to be watching today is about the gut. Just explain to our viewers the importance of the gut.
Well, it's very, very important that the large intestine, which is the colon, is kept healthy and detoxed. And when people have got a toxic colon, they will become sick, and it depends on their weakest organ as to where they will become sick. So if people are weak in the joints, for instance, maybe a genetic problem with that, then of course that's the first area where the body will break down. So really interesting to see how it works. So this is why I'm so keen on the colonics, on doing the coffee enemas, which we've talked about, and at all the top natural health institutes. You know, everyone is given the detox bag to use. I've got an awful lot of people ordering those from me at the moment. And people are getting well, because you can do the juices, but if you don't detox the colon, you just get a backup of the toxins that are coming out of the liver and not being evacuated from the body.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our first clip today. This is by Michael Haley, and this is Why Does Your Gut Get Sick? Let's take a look.
Why is your gut sick? I am convinced that everyone in here, myself included, does not have the optimal gut flora balance. There's too many things against us. We're going to go through a list here. You guys can help me out creating this list. Let's understand why our guts aren't optimal, why we're not able to absorb our nutrients optimally. What are some of the things that get in the way or have gotten in the way in our lifetimes?
Antibiotics.
Antibiotics is probably the number one, right? Yeah, if anyone here has ever taken an antibiotic, what that will do is wipe out bacteria, the good and the bad, and then when there's no bacteria present, your body says, okay, let's, the few that are here, let's start multiplying, and that one takes over. Once you have the wrong bacteria in your gut taking over, it's hard to ever get rid of it and replace it with the right gut flora. It creates a significant imbalance. What else? Okay, so we're going to call that one drugs. All right, drugs. If you take too many drugs, it can kill you, right? It can also kill the bacteria. They will overdose just like people, whether it be chemotherapy, pain relievers. Drugs kill, and they will kill your gut flora. What else?
Genetically modified food supply.
Sugar was a real good one, because what we're talking about there is feeding the wrong bacteria. And we, rather than having a healthy gut flora, we might have a yeast problem, candida, and get an imbalance that way. Someone else said something about the food supply.
Genetically modified.
Yeah, I think that one's a big one. And not as much in the gut flora problem, although because of the increase in pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, maybe. Let's look at genetic modified foods for a moment. One of the things that modification allows is more pesticides, right? More herbicides, more fungicides, more chemicals on the food. And we eat those things with the chemicals on them. What do they do to our gut flora? If it's a pesticide made to kill a bug, an insect, can it kill a little bacteria? Of course. I think there's a bigger problem in the genetic modifications, though. If we look at GMO corn, which is the big one, what's that toxin in the GMO corn? Bt toxin, has anyone ever heard of that? If you look at the Bt toxin, it's actually a sharp protein. This is really important, because if you're consuming anything that has GMO corn in it, you got to stop. The Bt toxin, its intent when the bugs eat it is to, we call it a sharp protein, because it'll actually poke holes in their digestion, in their digestive walls, kind of explode their stomachs, and then they can't eat anymore, so they stop eating, and that's how they die. Now, if it's able to poke holes in the bugs, what will it do in your stomach? Probably poke holes. Now, you might be a little bit more resilient than the little tiny bugs, and maybe it's just a slower death, causing the leaky gut.
Hi viewers, welcome back. Explain to us who that gentleman was, Dr. Michael Haley.
Well, Dr. Michael Haley's done a lot of research on the digestive health, and it's really interesting to hear him lecture there, and he's talking about the damage that's done by the antibiotics, by the GM foods, and he's absolutely right, because there is something called leaky gut syndrome, and that means that the digestion inside is not working properly, and the wrong things in our food are getting right through into the bloodstream, which makes us very sick. And one of the answers is to use probiotics instead of antibiotics, so that means pro-life instead of anti-life. And people really need to get acidophilus, lactobacillus, these are little capsules that you can get from health food shops, and really try and restore the health in the colon. But the great thing is to detox it as well with the washouts. Once you've established that and blockages are gone, then you can start building up the healthy flora in the gut. So lactobacillus is really good. You want one that is high in bifidus. And if you ask someone in the organic shop, they will tell you exactly what you should buy. The thing is that our food has become so processed, and our bodies really cannot cope with it, and that's why we have digestive problems.
If we may, can we just take it back to basics? And like there was mentioned about the gut flora balance, what is that exactly?
Well, you see, we have the balance in the body, and sometimes it gets completely acidified and out of balance. So that's why we need the green juices to actually restore the alkalinity. And then we have to implant, after we've washed out the colon, we can actually implant something like wheatgrass or the probiotics which we've mixed up with water, and we can implant them into the sigmoid colon. And the sigmoid colon will absorb them within 10 minutes. And you know, that helps to really restore the body's health. But of course, you can't do this in 5 minutes. You have to build up the intestinal flora, which you do with the correct diet. So when we go back to the fruit, the vegetables, the seeds, nuts, and the green plant, the body gradually recovers. And also, of course, when we're doing the juices, we're rehydrating, because a lot of people have literally dried out their digestive system. And we need to rehydrate. It's really, really important.
Now explain to our viewers what are the dangers or why we should avoid sugar.
Well, sugar feeds yeast in the body, and yeast feeds candida. There's a nasty thing called candida, which is like a fungus that grows in the body, can start in the colon, but actually it can migrate to, say, the lungs. And if people have an ongoing chronic lung problem, very often it's candida or candida that has actually formed in the lungs. So again, when we address the colonic health and the digestive health, will actually come back and the lungs will gradually improve. And of course, when we come off the dairy, you know, the milk, the cream, the cheese, all the dairy products, again, we will not make so much mucoid plaque in the body. And so again, the lungs will clear. But it takes a little bit of time for that to happen. It takes a few weeks, probably, of being radical. And the problem is, Si, that people play with this thing, you know, and they think they'll do a few juices. They probably do fruit juices, which are sugary, and feed the yeast. So they're not actually addressing the problem. We need the green vegetable juices. And my course, Get Well, Stay Well, really explains why we need to do these things. And when people understand the science behind it, they'll then do it, because you look at a plate of food and you think, what is this going to do to my body?
So there are no benefits, like you said, from the fruit juices that we can just buy normally in the supermarkets?
No, none, because they've got preservatives and they've got a lot of added sugar. And if their diet, if it says diet, you know, low sugar, that means it's a chemical called aspartame or something very similar. And that is actually more harmful than having ordinary real sugar.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is a continuation of why does our gut become sick, and this also talks about the preservatives that Felicity mentioned. Let's take a look.
Big one. What else? What else is irritating our guts? Processed foods. When I think of processed foods, I think a lot of altered foods, things like hydrogenated oils. I think of trans fats. I think of, well, chemicals, preservatives. Preservatives is an interesting one. What's a preservative do? Prevents the growth of bacteria and fungus and mold and yeast. If it can preserve in the bottle, what can it do in your gut? If it can kill, you know, when you look at preservatives, there's a couple things, a couple ways we look at them. One is, will it stop things from growing? And then the other is, what log reduction is there if you put something into it that's alive? How much can it kill off? And the companies, you know, figure out a balance between those two things so they can determine a shelf life. So if you're putting this stuff that's in a bottle and can let it sit on the shelf for a year, and then you consume that, it goes and it's preserving your guts, throwing off your microflora. What about artificial colors, artificial flavors? What about the water? Yeah, well, I think specifically the definite bacteria killers like the chlorines and the fluorines, the halogens, the bromines, iodines, or, you know, these halogens are toxic. That's why they put them in the water, to kill things. Now, yeah, I'm sure we don't drink from the tap anymore. We used to. And we probably all damaged our guts significantly back then. And now if you're using carbon filters, you're probably getting most of these chemicals out of your water. Make sure you change those filters. Because they don't work forever, right? What about mercury? You know, they use mercury in vaccines, right? Why? Because nothing can grow in a mercury environment. Yet we all have it in our mouth, I bet, you know, or have at some time.
Hi there, welcome back. So we're talking about why does our gut become sick. Now you mentioned before that clip about the processed foods. Just explain to us again, what are the dangers of processed foods?
Well, the processed foods have got chemicals in that God never produced, and they've been produced in the last 50 years and have caused a lot of problems. And of course, it's not just one chemical, but it's the synergistic effect of many different chemicals all working together. So we're in absolutely unknown territory. And when people have had vaccines, for instance, with a lot of mercury as the base and various heavy metals, then that is going to be very toxic to the body and affect the gut. And as I've just explained, when the gut is affected, then that can cause inflammation and problems throughout the whole body. You also mentioned water. And water is one of the things that's really, really important, because we should be drinking 2 liters a day. Depending on size, of course, you should be having a bit more water than I am, probably. But we have to make sure it's pure water, and that we're not infecting ourselves with the chlorine and the fluorine and all the rest of the things that are put in our public water supply and are probably lurking in our wells as well.
What is the best water for us to be drinking? What do you think about the filtered water, for example?
Well, we need to filter the water, and there's an awful lot of research being done at the moment on water. I'm in the middle of doing a program on that, so we'll cover that when I've finished the research. There's distilled water, which I got well on because I needed to detox radically when I had pancreatic cancer 11 years ago. There's a query about whether you should continue to be on only distilled water for the rest of your life. Some amazing bodybuilders I know swear by distilled water and will drink nothing else but. So a lot of people are pro, and then other people think that we should change and have, obviously, the freshest spring water that we can get. When we have water bought in a bottle, of course, a plastic bottle, we get a whole new scene of carcinogens from the heat on plastic. And when these plastic bottles are all packed on lorries and probably moved in the sunshine, they're probably all getting, the goodness is being contaminated by the gas from the plastic of the bottle. So, you know, what are we going to do? We're living in a perfect storm, really, aren't we?
I think, of course, you've experienced, you've had your experiences with water and contamination of water as well. Just remind our viewers very briefly.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of cancer in the family from the pharmaceuticals and the fertilizers and pesticides that had been put on the ground where we were living on a farm. And these chemicals had actually drained with the rainwater, percolated down to the level of the well. So we were actually drinking the chemicals and carcinogens, and my daughter died because of that. So obviously I'm very exercised about the water, and I think we just need to get pure water. And of course the rainwater has been purified by lightning in the sky, with clouds, with storms. But again, as there's so much flying now around the world, nearly everywhere in the world is overflown, so you're getting the contaminants from the planes that is actually contaminating the water before it falls to the ground as rain. You know, we talk about acid rain. Yeah. So, my goodness me, we should all go live in maybe south of New Zealand, which is a fairly relatively uncontaminated place. There's no nuclear energy down there, and you know, they do all the water. The hydroelectric dams provide the water as well, and it's all very pure. So I have been around the world really researching all these things, and we need to go somewhere where the water is pure.
Now, mercury was mentioned in the previous clip, and we know about mercury in our teeth as well. Just educate our viewers about that.
Well, I wish the dentists knew about the mercury in our teeth, because it's banned to make these amalgam fillings in a large area of the world, particularly the Scandinavian countries, and in America, half the dentists will not touch the amalgam fillings. You know, on the dentist's tray, when they're waiting to put it into your mouth, it's actually a hazardous waste. It's a hazardous toxin. So how anyone could possibly believe that you can put it in someone's filling in their tooth and that it suddenly is not toxic defies belief.
Why do you think there hasn't been more widespread news or education to everyone out there so they're more aware?
Money side, it's all about money. It's much cheaper to use the amalgam fillings, and that's why they do it. People used to have gold fillings, you know, we've heard stories about that. And there are other kinds of fillings. You can have ceramic fillings, for instance. And there are biological dentists who are trained to actually remove the harmful fillings. It's quite a performance, and I have not had it done. What I did when I had pancreatic cancer and was really ill, I just had the teeth taken right out.
And how does mercury,
the ones at the back.
How does mercury affect our gut?
Well, it's a heavy metal, so it's going to be a poison, an ongoing poison. Every time we eat, every time we chew, we're actually mixing our saliva with some of the heavy metal in the mouth. So a lot of the top cancer hospitals, say in Germany many years ago, I remember there was a British athlete called Lillian Board who was dying of cancer, and she went to one of these German clinics where they took out all her teeth. And I was thinking at the time, you know, how cruel, how ghastly. But in fact, they were trying to save her life because she was very contaminated from the heavy metal fillings. People need to go to a holistic dentist. Interestingly, I had one on my course in November, a South African dentist who's now working in England, and he does understand about it, and there's an association of holistic dentists now around the world, so it's always possible to get hold of one. But of course it's not as cheap as going to your national health dentist and just having the regular filling.
Okay, well, let's take further look into the effects of our gut, and this also can be caused by radiating foods, pasteurizing foods as well. So let's take a look at this clip and we'll be right back.
Pasteurization. Who eats pasteurized foods? Pasteurized foods. You take things that are alive and you kill them. The bacteria that naturally occurs on fruits and vegetables tends to be a very good, healthy probiotic bacteria. That's why you can take something like cabbage and naturally culture it and then consume it and be getting all these good, healthy probiotics. But we're killing them off. What about radiation? Doing the same thing. Radiation, you know, radiating foods to kill them. They're dead. They're no longer live foods. Here's one that's really popular in the live food movement. High pressure processing. What's high pressure processing? Well, we don't use heat. All we do is we put it in a chamber, we fill it up with so much pressure that anything that's alive explodes. If it explodes the things that are living, what can it do to the nutrients? What about things like, this is probably smaller stuff, but you know, electromagnetic radiation. What about antibacterial soaps? You know, remember the skin and the gut, they're really one organ. They work together. Chemicals in cosmetics. Parabens are a big one. You know, I happen to be in this industry and I had to learn the hard way. When we were formulating our products, see, I took over a company that had the world's best aloe vera and the best working aloe creams. But they had parabens in them and triethanolamine and all kinds of harsh preservatives. The kind of stuff that if you go to the grocery store and pick up anything in the cosmetic aisle, they're in there, they're in all of them. But we said, we got to get rid of those. So in our first you know, trial and error, working with the laboratory, saying can't have this, can't have this. Well, what about these natural preservatives? Okay, that's really good. But we also, you know, we want this in it. We want, you know, tremella mushroom, shea butter, manuka honey, blah, blah. You know, we went through our list of all the good, healthy things that we wanted in there, and we let the lab source them. Well, what do you think they preserve these things with? Parabens. But I didn't realize it doesn't go on the label because those are only the ingredients that have the chemicals in them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what we had to do is fire that lab, and we do all the sourcing ourselves now. So that, and it, you know, it's like, okay, what are we getting? Manuka honey. Is there anything in it? What are we getting? Tremella mushroom. Is there anything else in it? What's preserving that particular ingredient? And you know, yeah, a lot of stuff you buy that don't have parabens on the labels, but you're getting them.
Hi there, welcome back. I was just talking to Felicity during that clip, and the final thing you said is you just want to get the word out there, isn't it? You just want to educate.
Absolutely. We do it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. We do it on let's get the word out there because it actually saves lives.
That's it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We're trying to educate. The list continued, okay? Pasteurized food, explain to us about that.
Well, again, that's processed food. And, you know, really we want to get back to the foods that God has given us and to have them as fresh as we can, which is why I go to the little market here on Saturdays and Wednesdays. And there's always a farmer's market near most people, wherever they live. You want to get back to the organic farmers markets, find an organic farm, go on the internet and find out who's actually doing organic farming near you. And there are also companies in England who will actually post organic parcels of, you know, the fruit and the vegetables to anywhere in the country. So really, the word is getting out. There are more raw food restaurants growing up as well, and people are getting juice from juice bars, you know, the real juice, not just something that's out of a pack.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds very good. And I think it's the good thing about having a juice bar, like you said, is you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people as well, aren't you?
Well, that's the fun thing. You find your people. And so your friends change as you move from perhaps a, you know, rather worldly lifestyle to the natural health lifestyle. I've got the most amazing group of friends now who I've had from, you know, childhood, with all, you know, my sporting friends, the business friends, and now I've got the health friends, and they are the best ever. So having such fun, and everyone's getting well and staying well, that's the basis of it.
Now, we saw in the clip it was mentioned about the cosmetics and the chemicals on cosmetics. I mean, just explain to our viewers what are the dangers in the cosmetic industry.
Well, of course, we take in a lot through our skin, as you know. So when we have a shower and the water has got chlorine or fluorine in it, we are actually taking in, I think he says on one of the clips, about 9 glasses of chlorinated water as we stand there in the shower, singing our little song and being happy and thinking how healthy we are in there. So we're actually being chlorinated. And so what we need to do really is be really careful what goes on the skin. So for instance, I now use coconut oil, which is absolutely wonderful, from Sri Lanka and other wonderful places in the world. And I just use that on my skin. And I've been able to eliminate all those costly creams and lotions, you know, that there's such marketing on these things, isn't there? Yeah. You know, and you think you're doing someone a favor by buying them some perfume or some makeup, and in fact you're poisoning them.
I mean, there are, regarding coconut oil, there are so many benefits from coconut oil. I mean,
well, it's wonderful because it's a natural it's antibacterial, it's antiviral, it's anti-inflammatory. It can stop toothache right in your head as you're swilling. You're doing the oil swilling that we've talked about, the oil pulling where we put the coconut oil in the mouth, let it dissolve, and just swish it round for about a quarter of an hour. And that will heal problems with the teeth. Will also, if you've got mouth ulcers or something like that, they will be completely healed. It is amazing, and I bumped my arm the other day quite badly and took about an inch of skin off, And immediately, held it really hurt. And I thought, right, coconut oil. And I went and there's blood everywhere. It was really exciting, very technicolor. And, I put the coconut oil on and I pressed it. And, amazingly, in a week, there's just a little scar there. And it's healed so well.
Coconut oil. Don't leave home without it.
It's heavy to carry, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
But, and of course, it solidifies in a cold temperature, so it goes white, like ice cream you could put in the fridge. Or in a nice warm climate, it's quite runny and transparent.
We're just about to go to a clip now by Joe Cross. He's made a movie about his transformation. I think basically he came to the age of 40 years old and he realised the road that I have been on all my life is the wrong road and I need to make some serious changes. Just briefly explain to us about his story.
Well, he's a lovely guy and he's made this film Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, which is what he was at 40, and he had a skin irritation called urticaria, chronic urticaria, which was all over his body, and he was told by the doctor that he'd have to have these pills for life, and he began to think, I don't want to do this. And he said he looked as though he was having twins. So he realized, he had to improve himself aesthetically and physically, and he went for it, and he made a film called Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, which is terrific, and you can get that off my website, which I've got a shop with Philip Day, an affiliated shop. And we know that when people see an amusing film, they're inspired, they're educated at the same time, and they're entertained, so people will take it on board.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this clip. This is by Joe Cross, and this is about his film, Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead.
Hi everybody, it's Dara, and I'm so very lucky, fortunate, blessed, and happy to be sitting here with Joe Cross. We're here to discuss his film, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Dara, how are you?
Good. We're just meeting right now, and I want to share with him and you, basically Penny Shelton, the founder of rawfoodrehab.com. She called me up and she said, you're not going to believe it. We've discussed your movie, and we love it. And she said, I called Joe Cross, I got in touch with him, and he's willing to meet you. He has some time, he's in LA, and here I am. So we're going to talk about this movie, which has changed so many people's lives.
Including mine.
Including yours. Can you tell us
Let's
a little bit about it? So you give it a little intro?
Sure. Well, a lot of people have seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, it's essentially a story about how I got to 40 years of age, and I had like the Oprah aha moment that I was fat, I was 100 pounds overweight, I was sick, I was taking medication night and day for a debilitating autoimmune disease called chronic urticaria, which is just a fancy way of saying chronic hives, so swelling and all that sort of stuff. And I was taking the pills for 8 years, from effectively when I was 32 to when I was 40. And I was nearly dead. And the nearly dead part is that being that much overweight and taking pills like that, it's a slippery slope. And I was just hitting my 40s, and I kind of remember when I was a young kid that, friends of mine's dads died of heart attacks in their 40s. Yeah. So I sort of end up in this zone where in America right now with the, you got a 52% chance of dying by either cancer or heart disease in this country and my country. So I sort of looked at that and went, I'm a walking time bomb, so I'm effectively nearly dead. So I was fat, sick, and nearly dead, and
with red blotches.
Red blotches.
Yeah.
And I sort of said, I thought I was a smart guy. I thought I was smart because I'd been a business guy and all that. Well, depends how you define successful, right? I mean, successful for me was one thing. Now successful to me is another thing, which is flipping wealth and health. So instead of focusing on wealth, I now try to focus as best I can on health.
Which has probably changed some business decisions. One of the questions
Definitely.
that came in on rawfoodrehab.com was someone asked, has it changed how you invest? Has it changed your consciousness about business? And I'm sure. Without
question it has. In fact, I've been trying to and have been successful at selling off a bunch of my assets that I had invested in prior to this experience, and now I'm really interested in this whole space of healthy living and inspiring and educating and entertaining people. And so I'm sort of very fortunate because this movie, you know, the idea of this movie, you know, it was, it came about because of looking in the mirror. But you know, a lot of people look in the mirror and aren't happy with what they see. I mean, I figure actually that most people wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and aren't happy.
And right? you connected with them in that way by showing them your belly on
oh, sure.
I mean, that was like, wow, that was...
No, you've got to go all the way out there. I mean, you know, I call it getting in the house of mirrors and having a good hard look at yourself.
He showed his belly. He showed himself at his worst. It was brave, but also it allows people to see, wow, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
That's...
I mean, I was 310 pounds, right? 320
It's hard
pounds.
to imagine. Looking at you, it's shocking.
Yeah, well, it was shocking to me. I have to look at myself every day.
The really cool thing that one of the parts, and there were so many parts that I resonated about in the movie, was when you said, thank goodness it happened. Like, thank goodness those symptoms and, you know, and everything happened so that you could see that it was time for a change. Like, people need to look at their symptoms or their health opportunities, right?
Well, I think that's a really, really good point, Dara, because I genuinely, honestly believe this, is that I think the best thing that happened to me was getting sick.
Right.
Now, when I got sick, and you know, it's like when most people get sick, I was like anybody else. You get sick, you go to the doctor, they give you pills,
right.
You look up at the sky and go, thank the Lord, I live in 2007, 2010, 2011, where this sort of medicine exists, okay? Then, after about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, when you're supposed to go off the pills, off the medication, and you go back to the doctor and they say, no, Joe, you'll be taking this for a while, or for a while. They didn't say forever yet.
Okay.
For a while. I'm like, hold the phone, hold on.
Yeah.
Every other pill I've been on in my life, I took it for a set period of time. I was good, and then there was no more pill taking. Are you telling me yes, you got to keep taking this and we'll monitor it? After a year, 2 years, when I kept going back saying, is it time to get off them? It's no, it looks like you'll be on them forever.
Hi there, welcome back. So interesting. Joe Cross said the best thing that ever happened to him was when he got sick. I mean, it's a shocking statement to make, but sometimes you need to be radical and realise the state of your health is so bad, it's so serious, you need to make some very radical changes.
That's right, it's the wake-up call. And we really have to thank God for that. So when we have a headache or we have irritation, inflammation, you know, we have to thank God and say, right, thank you for the wake-up call, because I've got to change something. My body is saying, don't do this to me anymore. I can't take it anymore. And so the body is actually showing you, you know, you're doing something wrong. And so for Joe, of course, who was so unfit and covered in this awful rash and on drugs and afraid of having a heart attack at 40, you know, it was a big wake-up call. And of course it's changed his life. He's made this film. He's changed the lives of so many people, because he's, you know, he's a bloke's bloke. He's great fun. He's Australian. He's tough. He calls a spade a spade. And I love that. So it's not some doctor saying, you know, you should do this. This is actually someone saying, I've done it and it's worked.
I think you're absolutely right. I think people just want to relate to somebody. It's rather than the white coat syndrome. Obviously, you listen to the doctor, but you're really saying, do you know what I'm going through right now in my life? And when you've got someone like Joe Cross, who has been there and he has done all the fast foods and he's maybe done some alcohol and cigarettes and not the greatest things in the world, but he's been to the extreme. And now he's come to where he has, and he's transformed his life. And now he can really feel the difference. And when he talks to other people, he sees them in a bar or something. He says, I know where you were. I know I was there, but look at me now. And that's how people just want to be talked on the same level, really, isn't it?
There's nothing like personal testimony. It is so strong. It's like when we tell people about our personal testimony with the Lord, you know, what the Lord's done in our life. That's better than 1,000 sermons that we might listen to that are a bit, should we say, intellectual. It's really knowing somebody whose life has been changed by the wake-up call, and they've got onto this common sense Genesis 1:29 and 30 based program, really a health program.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is by Joe, and he's talking about inflammation. Let's take a look.
That's like one of the worst things to ever hear in your life. So I was at this point where this really was the worst thing. I mean, physical pressure. If you were to shake my hand, like just shake it, the firm grip, I would wince at that. Not
really?
Not at the pain that you were doing.
Yeah.
I would wince knowing that 3 to 4 hours later, the swelling would appear.
Really?
Now, if a really, like a solid guy, like a solid grip, some of these men can really shake a hand. If I would shake their hand and they would grip it really tightly, it would be like 3 or 4 hours later as though my hand was slammed in a car door.
Because of the prescriptions or because of your...
No, because of what was happening was
inflammation, is it?
Yeah, my body, my immune system was all messed up. It was confused that physical pressure, so like actual pressure on the outside of the skin, was confusing that for a break under the dermis. So in other words, when a mosquito, I did it in the movie, when a mosquito breaks through the skin, your body says, oh, we've got an invasion, let's protect it. Well, my body couldn't define the difference between a break of the skin or pressure on the skin. So it was, and everything in your life's got to change.
The juicing and all of the things that you've done have really got reversed it, or like, do you still have symptoms like that?
No. So the way what happened is that I effectively learnt the thing that sort of kept me, like when I turned 40, and I went, whoa, I've got to, like, what have I been doing? The piece of information that stuck with me the most was that 70% of all disease is caused by lifestyle choices. Now, just think about that. 7 out of 10 diseases are caused by lifestyle choices of all the people out there that are sick. So I wanted to find out, was my disease, was I causing it? Was I lucky enough to be in that 70% category?
Because genetic or something that happened to you.
Like we've all heard the terribly sad stories about 4-year-old kids with leukemia.
Right.
That's got nothing to do with their diet. Right. I mean, that's just the way, unfortunately, the genetic cards or the way that the genetic chips were dealt. Okay. So I wanted to find out, was I lucky enough to be in a position where I could actually effect change? So I turned my back on anything that was Mother Nature driven. Like I was a very, when I was a very poor eater when it came to eating micronutrient rich food.
Did you eat like hamburger? What did you eat? What were you eating? What was the first thing that you can think of that you just totally cut?
Well, I lived on processed carbohydrate.
Okay.
So I would live on breads, pastas, pizzas, bases, a lot of processed meat. So a lot of like salamis, hams,
nitrates. And did you? I have so many questions, but Dr. Furman, he's so well respected. Did you decide to go micronutrient because you met him, or did you meet him after you had that aha moment? What was the?
No. So the first thing was like really looking in the mirror on my 40th birthday and going, you're a disgrace. I mean, look, you've got a belly out there that could be having twins.
Right.
I mean, and I'm a man.
You guys have to see this.
So it was like, this is not good, okay?
Yeah.
Then the next thing was Professor Ron Penny in Australia told me 70% of all disease is caused by lifestyle choices. Then it was, well, I've now got to run towards Mother Nature, so what do I do? I mean, what do I do? I mean,
that's why people are coming to me and to Penny and to people. They want to know, what do I do?
So I'm a logical guy, right? Yeah, so I sort of look at it. Well, I can solve this. I don't need to go to people. I'll solve this, and that's no disrespect to people. I just am one of these people that I have to. It has to rest. The answer needs to come from me. I really believe that all the big answers to our life, the answers are within us. Yeah. And I have a little saying, which is, you don't learn anything new. You just remember what you've forgotten. So in other words, we have the information, okay? And all I had to do was search inside to get the right gut feel of what was going to be right for me. So I knew deep down that fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds were good for me. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, everyone knows that. Yeah. But there's a difference between knowing it and doing it.
And how do you do it? Where do you go? And doing it.
Hi there, welcome back. Just a very interesting point that was made there. 70% of all diseases are caused by our lifestyle choice. What are your thoughts on that, Felicity?
I would say 95% of disease is caused by lifestyle choice.
Wow.
That's shocking, isn't it?
That is absolutely shocking.
And it's also what the parents have eaten that has condemned the child. Maybe he's talking about the little child with, the 4-year-old with leukemia. That hasn't just come out of the blue. That has come from contaminants and from carcinogens that have happened. We're all getting a dose of radiation from Fukushima because it's just blowing around in the air. And so, sadly, children are getting sicker younger, and this is a huge cause for great concern. And young couples are more infertile now. A third of young couples are infertile. So we're gradually writing ourselves out, really.
Just remind our viewers, what are the main foods that we need to be really avoiding?
To avoid the processed food, I mean, things like spam and corned beef and all the things that I used to think were absolutely delicious. And pizzas and all the processed foods, the sugary drinks, of course, are they are marketed to be so wonderful for losing weight. And I know people who live on the diet sodas, as they call them, or the caffeinated sodas, and think that they're doing themselves good because it's low sugar. In fact, it's aspartame, which is a carcinogen, which is actually causing them immense problems.
Soft drinks, like the fizzy drinks, they can be addictive, can't they?
Well, totally, because it's sugar. We're all addicted to sugar. And it's interesting that the baby formula that the children are put onto, the mother breastfeeds for a little bit, or maybe she doesn't even breastfeed at all. And the child grows up with the formula, which of course is sugared to make it taste nice. And so this starts a lifetime addiction on sugar. And people want the milky things as well. And of course they've been also introduced to cow's milk far too young. And so, we shouldn't be drinking the milk from another species. And, where I come from in Jersey with the Jersey cow, and in Ireland where they have a lot of cattle as well, people have been brought up thinking that this is health food. And in fact, it causes a huge amount of disease. And Dr. Brian Clement, who is the director of Hippocrates Health Institute in America, he came to Jersey and he broke the news to them because I knew they wouldn't listen to me. And he said, dairy is the biggest cause of cancer in the world.
Now, Joe's, just explaining about Joe's story, when he was 40, he had such bad inflammation. When someone would shake his hand, a few hours later, he'd have swelling all over the hand. Just explain to us more about inflammation.
Well, he'd probably been put on steroids, prednisolone and the other steroids that we have. And so the body, this causes autoimmune disease in the body. And we have to really get rid of inflammation completely. And we do that by getting on the Genesis diet, 129 and 30. I keep going back to it. It's the fruit, the vegetables, the seeds, the nuts, and the green plant in their natural form. And when we do that, we can make nut butters, for instance. So you've got a creamy consistency. You can have avocado pears. You can have the coconut. You can have the onions, the garlic, which of course is wonderful and will kill disease. Garlic is amazing. If you ever think you're fighting a cold, you just want to have lots of cloves of garlic. And it's amazing how the body will respond to that without having to go to antibiotics.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is a continuation with Joe, and he's explaining how to lose weight.
How do you do it? Where
And
do you
doing
go?
it.
Yeah, and doing it.
So what I wanted to do was to work out, well, how do I go about this? And so, there were two things I wanted to do. Number one, I wanted to incorporate all of this food into my life and get rid of all the other food.
Okay.
That was kind of for the health thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, well, how do I lose weight? Because I'm carrying around, this 100 pounds.
Right.
Now, at the end of the day, I've learned a lot since I made the movie, because I made the movie in late 2007 through all of 2008.
And you had just started the journey of, obviously, because you still had the belly when you first started the
Oh, yeah,
movie,
yeah.
and now
But I've learned a lot since then.
Okay.
But at the time, my logic was that what I need to do is ask the question, why do we have this capacity to store up so much fat? Like, why? Like if you feed the body 7,000-8,000 calories a day, you just keep feeding it, and not do any exercise, it's going to keep the store.
Hi there, welcome back. Talk to me about the storage of fat.
Well, the fat just stores under the body because the body feels that it's because we're not feeding the body the right living enzymes. The body feels that it's on a terrible famine, because although you're feeding it all the wrong things, it's not getting what it needs. So the body will store what it can, and we're never eliminating it. This is why we go back to having to do the colonics, the juices, to detox the body, to eliminate, because otherwise we're just building up more and more toxicity. Fat is not just unsightly on the body, fat is actually toxicity.
Now, regarding the foods that we eat, the foods that we put in our body, how does that affect the way that our minds work and our psychological, mental state, shall we say?
Well, it's huge, because when people get on the raw food diet, they suddenly feel so light and bright and happy. And if we're eating dead foods, if we're eating particularly animal food that has been cruelly treated, and there's the sort of psychological side to that, as well as the physical side, that the animal has been abused with all kinds of antibiotics, steroids, growth hormones. There's also the psychological side, that the animal has suffered all through its life probably, and then faces a fearful death. And so the animal gives off a lot of adrenaline and fear, which then we take into our body when we eat those foods.
Just explain to our viewers, I mean, we've always got new viewers on Revelation TV, and they want to know what is the ideal diet, what foods they should be eating.
Okay,
so we've said the foods we shouldn't be eating. What are the foods that we should be eating?
We go back to exactly what God ordains for us when He creates us, Genesis 1:29 and 30. Behold, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, every tree with fruit with seed in it, and this will be to you as food, and to every living thing I give green plant. And the reason is that these are living enzymes, that they contain the right electricity and the right oxygen in the body, and the hydrogen, which is how God intended us to live. We are electrical beings, and God has breathed the breath of life into us. But if we're eating dead foods, then of course our cells do not regenerate. They gradually get sicker and sicker until an organ breaks down, and then we have a disease. But we can feel, long before disease actually hits us and is diagnosed by a doctor, we can feel that we're tired, we can feel that we're enervated, we have this fatigue, and feel generally irritated, inflamed. And that's the wake-up call. That's the moment to change. And there's there's hundreds of thousands of people now on the raw food diet. And even if people will move to, say, 51% on the raw food diet, what a huge difference that will make in the body.
I think the most important is they decide that they want to make a change in their life. And let me just give it out to all our viewers out there as well. If you've watched today's program, you think, do you know something, I'm going to give that a try. I don't like the way that my life has been over the last few years, or the foods that I've been eating, and I want to make a drastic change. Just do it. Just do it. Don't think about it. Just get on and do it. And just give yourself maybe a week or two, and really do see how you feel different, and how your body feels. You feel you've got more energy. You feel more full of life, shall we say. So Felicity, we're just coming towards the end of today's program. Just give us your final thoughts, if you may.
Well, it's been interesting because we've heard from a scientist, and we've heard from someone who's actually walked the walk as well as talking the talk. And I think it's really fascinating that when we come back to the knowledge that we always knew, he made that point. There's nothing new here. This is this ancient knowledge that comes from the Bible, that we should be living on living foods. Okay,
Felicity, we have come towards the end of today's program. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to all our viewers as well. Remember, we've covered a number of clips on today's show, so Revelation TV has a catch-up service. It's revelationtv.com. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you same time next time on Revelation TV. God bless. Bye.